It feels like a pragmatic appointment of a fairly pragmatic coach, with no disrespect at all. His record speaks for itself as an established Premier League manager with Burnley and Everton, experience of Europe as well, getting out of difficult situations, and the sort of metrics and data that Forest would have been sifting through. It was Edu leading the process with George Sirianos, the sort of global head of football and global technical director.
It's a bit of a return to some semblance of security, certainly defensive security, given one of the main issues with Postecoglou's football. There is a bit of romance to the story, given that Dyche is a boyhood fan.
And Dyche maybe gets a bit of an unfair rap. He's been very sort of economical. He's worked with the players that he's had at his disposal, and he tends to get the best out of them.
But it probably doesn't speak to maybe the sense of kind of progress that maybe Marinakis, the owner, and the football leadership at Forest wanted, when Nuno was moved on, or what they would have considered the ambitions for the season this summer. But I suppose the context has changed now, because almost a quarter of the way into the season, or close to a third of the way into the season, they're just above the relegation zone.
Now, on Monday Night Football, Jamie Carragher questioned whether this will be a long-term fix for Nottingham Forest.
He came in at Everton, I think, when they were bottom of the league, certainly in a later part of the season than this. And it'd be really interesting if Sean Dyche keeps them up, which I think he will. What happens the following season, whether Sean Dyche is actually there, because it feels like the last few days there's been negotiations around the length of the contract if Sean Dyche does come in. And I actually think it'd be really, as I said, interesting to see whether they stick with that style of football, if Sean can keep them in the Premier League, or whether they actually say, no, we want to be this type of team, and we've done it once, hasn't quite worked, we're going to go again.
So Sean Dyche is the new head coach at Nottingham Forest. He signed a deal until the summer of 2027. The former Forest youth player arrives with his familiar backroom team of Ian Woan and Steve Stone, both, of course, enjoying success at the City Ground. Right, good morning to Jamie O'Hara. What's your reaction to this? And is it an admission that Forest think they're in trouble?
No, I don't think it's to say you're in trouble just because you bring Sean Dyche in. I think Sean Dyche is a really good manager. He knows what the football club's about. He's been in tough situations before. And I think, look, there's still a lot to play. They're still in Europe, They can still have a successful season, Nottingham Forest. They're not cut adrift. It's been a terrible start. The Ange Postecoglou saga, I think we all thought was just the wrong appointment. But I feel like this is the right appointment. And Sean Dyche will go in there with his backroom staff, Ian Woan, Steve Stone. They know the football club. They've been there. They know what it's about. And I think this is a good signing for Marinakis and Nottingham Forest.
Well, let's head to the Tottenham Forest training ground now. Anton Tolui is there covering this huge story for us. Good morning, Anton. Right, they've gone from Nuno to Ange, now to Dyche. What a roller coaster few weeks it's been at the club.
Yeah, it really has. And I think, just following up from what Jamie was saying there, I feel like this appointment is more kind of an admission that they need to go back to a more pragmatic style of football, because in the 39 days and just 8 games that Ange Postecoglou had, in most of the games they dominated possession, they created more chances, their expected goals ratio was higher, and yet they were making fundamental errors, losing games they should have won, conceding 11 goals from set pieces. And now they just kind of got to go back. Look, they're in a position they don't want to be in. They feel as though that someone like Sean Dyche is the kind of manager that can come in and get the fundamentals right at the club, get them sort of defensively solid, and enable them to be in a position where they have a strong foundation for all their attacking talent to finally flourish and start scoring goals on a regular basis. So it's interesting looking at the statement that Nottingham Forest put out today, and you compare it to the statement they put out 6 weeks ago when they appointed Ange Postecoglou. When Ange Postecoglou was appointed, you had quotes from the owner, Angelos Marinakis, and you had talk about the ambition of the club. This statement about Sean Dyche talks about his connection with the club, Ian Woan, Steve Stone, their connection with the club, highlighting the fact that those two played for the club more than 400 times, and obviously talking about the fact that this search was led by Edu Gaspar, the head of football here at Nottingham Forest. So not so much about the owner. This one was a thorough search, was the words that they're using, and they've come up with Sean Dyche mainly because of his Premier League experience, because he knows what it takes to get a team out of trouble like this.
But in terms of getting out of trouble, is that his only remit, just to keep Nottingham Forest up, for the short term anyway?
No, it absolutely isn't. The ambition still hasn't gone away from this club. They see this as a blip, but they still have high aspirations at the club this season. The pressure is on Sean Dyche to do well in the Premier League and in the Europa League. Look, they expect to go deep in the Europa League this season, and the fact he's only got 2 training sessions to prepare for a huge game against Porto tomorrow puts a lot of pressure on him from the first game, because they haven't won in the competition so far, only 1 point so far. So they do know that they need points in that competition as well as in the Premier League. And in the Premier League, Nottingham Forest still see themselves as a team that should be finishing at least in the top half. At the start of the season, the ambition was to finish at least 7th in the Premier League, not to have a blip when they go into Europe for the first time. Even though statistically teams are more likely to in their first season of European football, Nottingham Forest spent big this summer, and they spent a lot on attacking talent to make sure they wouldn't be in that position. So Sean Dyche has a few things he needs to sort out. 1, their Premier League form. 2, making sure they go deep in Europe. And 3, utilising the big squad here.
Does Marinakis and or Edu deserve credit for saying, right, well, we made a mistake with Ange Postecoglou, but we've put it right and we've done it quickly and decisively?
It depends who you listen to, because I find Nottingham Forest in their summer fascinating, and I know about you, because they went out and spent a lot of money, and they went out and spent a lot of money on attacking players. So they went out and spent like £35 million on Amari Hutchinson, Dylan Backward, £25 million on Arno Calimuendo, £25 million on James McAtee. Well, none of those players were in the matchday squad when they took on Chelsea at the weekend. There's £120 million worth of talent sitting on the bench. Those deals were all ticked off by Edu. So, and that kind of makes you feel like those would be Ange Postecoglou players, right? A manager that was going to come in and bring in expansive football, make the most of these attacking players. Well, that hasn't happened. So, yes, they've sort of pulled the plug when it didn't work with Ange Postecoglou results-wise, but recruitment-wise, did they get it right in the summer? Because they have a squad that is kind of definitely sort of more forward-focused than defensively, and yet they brought in a coach now that will look at the defensive fundamentals and go, actually, do I have the players that can come in and be able to do what I want them to do? They have a big squad, they have a talented squad. I just wonder whether the balance is right. So yes, they'll be happy, the people will be happy with the fact that the fans are very happy with the fact that they decided to get rid of Ange Postecoglou quickly. But do they have the squad to keep on going from this defensive, offensive, defensive style again? It's going to be fascinating to see.
It will be, certainly. Anton, thank you. We're going to speak to a Nottingham Forest fan in just a moment, but Jamie, we talked there about Sean Dyche and what the future might hold for Nottingham Forest. Let's just quickly go back to Ange Postecoglou.
Yeah.
What was your reaction when he was sacked on Saturday?
Well, there's no surprise. I mean, it was a disaster. I mean, he come in with all the baggage that he had from Tottenham, with his style of football, his disregard to defending, his disregard to sorting out set pieces. He just took it. He didn't learn anything. Because he won the Europa League, he went in there with, I would say, with an ego, with a bit of an arrogance again, to say, I'm the man and I can do this. And you saw very quickly that he wasn't the man, and his style of football just didn't work. And Nottingham Forest players, I don't think ever really were on board with what he was doing as a manager. You could see in the performances from the players, they just weren't quite having what the manager was trying to tell them to do, and they kept losing games. Look, the players have got to be better. You can blame Ange Postecoglou, and his reign will go down as one of the worst ever at Nottingham Forest. But the players need to be better as well. They need to step up. Sean Dyche is going in. Sean Dyche, he hasn't got a crystal ball. They got to win games. They got to work hard. They got to get disciplined. They got to stop conceding goals. Last season when I watched Nottingham Forest, they were resilient, tough to beat, didn't concede easily. They hit you on the counter attack. They've got to bring that football back. But Sean Dyche ain't got a crystal ball. If you expect him just to come in all of a sudden they're going to win every week, it doesn't work like that. Players have got to step up. Some of them have not been good enough.
There are lots of clubs and lots of leagues around the world, I know that, but do you think in terms of the Premier League, that's it for Ange Postecoglou?
Yeah. Look, you never know in football, but I feel maybe in England that might be the one where Ange probably goes somewhere else now and manage. Look, he'll go and get another job. Of course he will. He's a good manager. He's won the Europa League, so he knows what he's a good manager. I just don't know whether everything about what he brought with his interviews and the things he would come out with and the way he acted. I just don't know if the Premier League is probably the place for him for his next one. He'll get somewhere else, and maybe you learn, and then you come back and say, I got things wrong. But he lost 22 games, I think, at Tottenham last season, and then he gets another opportunity at Nottingham Forest, and he messes it up within 4 weeks. So I think maybe you have to go away and look at yourself.
Sean Dyche inherits a big squad, but I guess Chris Wood seems to be ideal for him. He's had him before, of course, at Burnley, and the way Dyche plays.
Yeah.
Wood didn't suit Postecoglou. He will suit Dyche, won't he? Which has been proven in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think Sean Dyche is the perfect manager for the Premier League right now. I know we're going to talk about the way the Premier League's being played at the moment, but the style of football is long ball, throw-ins, get the ball in behind, try and get pressure on, on the centre halves and causing problems from set pieces. Sean Dyche is the perfect manager for this. So he comes into a Premier League where I feel like it's gone a little bit old school at the moment, and he's got Chris Wood. Chris Wood's the perfect player for that scenario, and it weren't working for Ange Postecoglou with Chris Wood. He missed a couple of chances, he's lost a bit of confidence. I think he'll be going straight back in the team, and I think they've got a good side, Nottingham Forest. They've got European football. They're a good side with some top players. Sean Dyche must be rubbing his hands together, thinking, what an opportunity I've got here to take this club forward. Because really and truthfully, Ange goes in, and there was a hangover from Nuno. The fans loved Nuno, and he got him European football. They had a great run. Everyone was in high spirits, and then he left. It all went sour very quickly. So it was tough for Ange, but I think they've got to put it all to bed now. They're in disarray. The fans are going to get behind Sean Dyche. They know what he's about as a manager. They know where they're at now, and they're going to kick on with him in charge. And I think they can still do all right this season.
We are going to get a fan reaction very soon. Right, OK, so Peter's very happy. I think both those Forest fans very happy about the appointment. Let's hear from another one. It's been a big few weeks for them, hasn't it? Ellie Mollison joins us now. Ellie, good morning to you. I think, first of all, how happy are you with this appointment?
I'm really happy with this appointment. I think there is a bit of a label for Sean Dyche where people seem to think that he is nothing other than like a ship steadier, someone that will keep you up short term. But I think that's quite disrespectful, really, because I think everyone's forgetting what he did with Burnley in the 17-18 season. I think he is more than that. I think he's got a bunch of talented players that he certainly hasn't had the opportunity to work with before. As much as it might not seem like that at the moment on paper, we know that our players are massively underperforming, and there is a lot of potential in our team. I think he's very similar to Nuno as well in many, many ways. Nuno prioritised defensive stability. That is something that Dyche is really well known for doing, which means that the transition between Nuno ball, which the players are used to now being under Sean Dyche, will be much, much easier than that transition, the initial attempt at transition between Nuno and Ange.
Can you tell us what the last few weeks have been like for a Forest fan?
Chaotic, as always. Sad. I think more than ever, it's the least unity and togetherness we've ever had as a club since being promoted. Certainly since being promoted. And it almost felt like fans weren't being heard, but the fact that we sacked Ange so quickly suggests otherwise. So I think I speak for all Forest fans in that we were really happy to see Ange go, with all due respect. We all knew that he's a very good manager, but a very bad appointment. So to see someone like Sean Dyche come in who genuinely cares for the club, loves Nottingham, lives here anyway, similar style of football to Nuno, it's a much better transition. I think he'll be able to work with the players he has rather than trying to force a style that he prefers on the players.
Ellie, look, Sean Dyche is a good manager. He ain't got a crystal ball, though. What I've watched from Nottingham Forest in recent weeks, you can blame Ange Postecoglou, but players need to be better. Some of the performances have been nowhere near good enough. Set pieces, giving goals away, corners, everything about you is just, it's just gone to pot. He's got to sort that out quickly, but, the players have got to step up.
Yeah, and I think there's a really interesting point in that a lot of people are saying that the players need to take accountability, which they absolutely do. But at the end of the day, the primary job of a manager is to manage people. And as obvious and cliche as that sounds, if you can't manage your personalities of the players on the pitch, you're not a manager, you're just a man with a board that draws pictures. At the end of the day, he was unable to get the best out of players that last season we knew were absolutely phenomenal. Now, I'm not expecting 100% every game, but we were getting about 30-40% from the majority of our players, the same players. So there's not really an excuse for that. Players absolutely need to take accountability, but it was very clear that they didn't want Ange in. They never wanted Nuno out, and they felt hard done by. You could see it in their mannerisms, as much as they were incredibly professional. I disagree with what the previous Forest fans said in that the work rate was low. That's not the case. They were working incredibly hard, but you could see that they were stressed. They were feeling anxious, the pressure. We couldn't convert any shots and score any goals, and we were having so many chances. That suggests that there's a real lack of confidence in the team at the moment. And I think who better to come in?
A lack of confidence, yeah, and you're in the bottom three, but the fans don't seem to think that you're going to be in a relegation battle. What do you think?
We're in a relegation battle at the moment. There's no two ways about it. But I think who better than to sort us out than Sean Dyche? That's his specialty. He's going to come in, reinforce that defensive stability. He's going to build on what we already had. And I think that's the main issue. I mentioned it before when we brought in Ange, that I think Ange has a tendency to be stubborn in what he wants to play, and he doesn't necessarily look at the players he has in front of him. Sean Dyche will look at the players he has in front of him. If he prefers that defensive stability, he will reinforce that, and then we can build from there. The reality is we are in a relegation battle at this moment in time, but I'm hoping for a mid-table finish under Sean Dyche, and I think he can provide that.
Yeah, in about 10 seconds, can you what are your feelings on the owner?
Love him. Absolutely brilliant. He loves the club. He dropped a clanger, but you knew he made a mistake and sorted it out quickly. He's brilliant.
Good. That seems to be the general feeling from your fans. That's good to hear. Okay, Ellie, thank you very much indeed.